Hello, ladies and gentlemen, in a world where volume often substitutes for value, and where the loudest voices dominate the discourse, it's easy to mistake noise for knowledge. In today's world, where attention is the most valued currency, there's a growing temptation to conflate noise with progress. We live in a time when optics often outrun outcomes. Social media rewards spectacle, not substance. Influence is measured by reach, not depth. The danger is that this dynamic doesn't just distract, it distorts. It encourages leaders to perform rather than to solve. But if you want to move the world forward, you have to resist that pull. Substance still matters. In fact, it's the only thing that does over the long run. When tackling real-world problems, things like eradicating disease, improving public education, addressing climate change, you find that the flashy announcements and viral moments don't get you very far. What works is understanding the problem deeply, relying on evidence, being willing to adjust course, and letting result. It's not applause, be the guide. It's not always glamorous. Most of the time, it's incremental. You experiment, fail, revise, and try again. That process doesn't always photograph well, but it moves the needle. Take, for example, the way innovation works. There's a popular image of invention as a sudden eureka, a moment. In reality, innovation is iterative. It involves poring over spreadsheets, revising code, testing hypotheses, analyzing data. Again and again, it's about precision and persistence. The people who make the biggest impact are usually those who spend less time selling their ideas to the crowd and more time refining those ideas until they actually work. The most difficult problems are stubborn. They don't yield to charisma. They don't care how many followers you have. They require technical knowledge, domain expertise, and a tolerance for delayed gratification. You can't game your way around them with good branding or well-timed press releases. That's why substance must come before spectacle. If your goal is to actually solve something, you need more than attention. You need the truth. Truth comes from rigorous thinking, from asking hard questions and accepting uncomfortable answers, from seeking disconfirming evidence, not just reaffirming applause. It comes from listening to people who know more than you do and being humble enough to change your mind. All of this is hard to package into a 60-second video, but it's essential if your goal is impact. What's ironic is that the most impactful work often looks boring from the outside. Designing a better vaccine distribution model, writing code for a more efficient energy grid, building tools for teachers in rural classrooms. These don't come with music tracks or dramatic voiceovers. But over time, they change lives, they change systems, and they change futures. There's nothing wrong with clear communication. In fact, communicating ideas well is a critical part of leadership, but communication should follow comprehension. It should reflect genuine understanding, not replace it. When communication becomes the goal rather than the bridge, you get an illusion of progress with none of the benefits. The pressure to appear brilliant in every interview, confident in every tweet, and correct in every prediction can become overwhelming. But real breakthroughs rarely come from people who are worried about how they look while working. They come from people who are willing to be wrong in service of eventually being right, from those who focus less on being followed and more on finding the right direction, even if it's the hard one. The next decade is going to test our values as a global society. The problems we face, whether they're environmental, economic, technological, or humanitarian, will demand more than clever marketing. They'll demand real solutions. And real solutions require people willing to dig in, get technical, ask uncomfortable questions, and keep going long after the camera is off. We can admire the noise, but we can't mistake it for signal. The future depends on clarity, on data, insight, experimentation, and follow-through. It depends on people who understand that the work of solving things is unglamorous by design. It's hard, slow, and often invisible. But it's also the only path that leads to durable progress. So the choice is simple. Do you want to be known for being heard or for being effective? Because rarely are they the same thing. And when the applause fades, it's the work that remains. It's easy to get caught up in the urgency of now. The news cycle spins faster than ever, metrics are tracked in real time, and pressure builds to show results instantly. But the most important work, the kind that changes how people live, learn, and survive, demands a different kind of attention. It asks for long-term thinking. It asks for patience, for depth, and for a commitment to a vision that might take years or even decades to realize. In a world obsessed with immediate returns, that kind of focus has become rare. But it's essential when you look at any major breakthrough, whether it's in healthcare, energy, education, or technology. You'll find that it didn't come from someone reacting to headlines. It came from someone who was looking beyond the moment. Someone willing to invest time and resources into something that wouldn't pay off right away, but had the potential to create exponential value down the road. That kind of visionary focus isn't about guessing the future. It's about building it brick by brick with clear goals and a deep understanding of the underlying systems. It starts with curiosity, asking big questions even when there aren't immediate answers. What would it take to eliminate malaria, not just reduce it? How can we develop clean energy that's not only sustainable but affordable for the poorest countries? What does a great education look like for a student who doesn't have access to Wi-Fi or a classroom? These questions are big and the solutions are complex, but complexity is not a reason to look away. It's a reason to look harder. There's a tendency to chase what's trending. And in business, in media, even in philanthropy, there's constant pressure to pivot quickly, to follow the money, follow the noise, follow whatever seems urgent today. But that mindset rarely leads to deep, systemic change. Visionary focus requires resisting that pressure. It means choosing to stay on a path even when it stops being popular, even when the results are still years away, even when people say you should move on. Because progress doesn't always show up on a quarterly report. Sometimes it shows up in a generation, and it's not just about identifying the right goals. It's about creating the right infrastructure to pursue them. That means building teams with technical depth, supporting them with consistent resources, and giving them the freedom to explore and iterate. It also means being okay with failure because big visions carry big risks. The important thing is learning from what doesn't work and using that information to guide what comes next. Visionary focus doesn't happen in isolation. It thrives when people with different perspectives come together and challenge each other's assumptions. That's where new insights emerge. That's how old systems get redesigned. It's not enough to have a big idea. You need a disciplined way to make it real. That discipline shows up in the data you collect, the models you build, and the feedback loops you maintain. It's not glamorous work, but it's necessary. One of the most overlooked parts of thinking long-term is being willing to plant seeds without knowing exactly when they'll bloom. Sometimes the work you do today lays the foundation for someone else to build on 20 years from now. And that's okay. If your vision is truly about impact, it can't be limited to what happens in your own lifetime. It has to be about creating the conditions for future breakthroughs, for future leaders, for future progress. There will always be people who chase the short-term win, who measure success by how much attention they get in the moment. But the real measure of success is what endures, what problems got solved, what systems got better, what lives got improved. Visionary focus means staying anchored in that bigger picture. It's about zooming out, seeing the patterns others miss, and staying the course even when the road ahead isn't clear. We're at a point in history where the challenges we face are both vast and urgent. But urgency doesn't mean abandoning vision. It means refining it, holding onto it more tightly, because without a long view, all we're doing is reacting. And reacting rarely gets us where we need to go. What gets us there is the work that isn't always visible, the kind that doesn't make headlines, the kind that's driven by a belief that we can leave the world better than we found it, if we're willing to think beyond today. Leadership is often misunderstood. It's easy to think it's about being the loudest voice in the room, the one with all the answers, or the person in charge of every decision. But that's not what makes leadership effective. Real leadership is quieter, it's more thoughtful, it's grounded in listening, in learning, and in staying anchored to what's true even when it's not popular. Authentic leadership isn't about pretending to be perfect, it's about being honest enough to admit when you're not. The world doesn't need more performers. It needs people who are willing to tell the truth, even when that truth is complicated. It needs people who are willing to say, "I don't know yet," or "We tried and failed, and here's what we learned." That kind of honesty is rare. But it builds trust, and trust is the foundation of every strong team, every breakthrough idea, and every real solution. When you work on problems that actually matter, problems like poverty, public health, education, clean energy, you are going to run into uncertainty. There won't always be a roadmap. You'll make choices that don't work out. If you pretend otherwise, people see through it. But if you're transparent, if you bring people along for the journey and share both the successes and the setbacks, you earn something far more valuable than applause. You earn credibility. Authentic leadership isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It's about recognizing the smartest ideas wherever they come from. That means creating space for others to speak up. It means encouraging disagreement, not just allowing it, because disagreement is how better decisions get made. It's easy to surround yourself with people who tell you you're right, but progress happens when you're willing to be challenged. It's also about consistency, not just in what you say, but in what you do. People watch the small things. They see how you treat others when no one's watching. They see whether your values show up in your actions, not just in your statements. Over time, consistency becomes integrity, and integrity earns respect that no title or position can give. The best leaders don't pretend to have superpowers. They're not immune to doubt or fear. What sets them apart is that they don't let those feelings paralyze them. They stay focused, they stay curious, and they keep showing up even when the path ahead is hard or unclear. That kind of resilience doesn't come from ego. It comes from a sense of purpose that runs deeper than personal ambition. Leading authentically also means knowing when to get out of the way. If you've built a strong team, your job isn't to control every outcome. It's to give people the tools and trust they need to do great work. That includes the freedom to experiment, to fail, and to try again. You don't build great organizations by micromanaging. You build them by believing in people and giving them room to rise. It also means taking responsibility when things don't go well. There's a tendency in leadership to deflect blame, to point to external forces, to unexpected events, to other people's decisions. But the most effective leaders don't make excuses. They own their choices, they learn from their mistakes, and they set a different standard for everyone around them. Accountability isn't weakness, it's strength. The world is changing fast. New technologies, new economies, new global challenges. They're reshaping what leadership looks like. And in that environment, the leaders who succeed won't be the ones with the biggest followings or the most polished speeches. They'll be the ones who are real, the ones who are willing to listen more than they speak, who are focused on outcomes, not optics, who lead with humility, not hype. We don't need more heroes. We need more humans, leaders who admit what they don't know, who bring others into the process, who hold themselves to high standards, and who keep working not because it's easy, but because it's right. That's what creates lasting impact. That's what earns trust over time, and that's what sets apart the kind of leadership that endures. Authenticity isn't a style, it's a discipline. It means doing the hard work of aligning your values with your actions over and over again. It doesn't always get headlines, but it's the kind of leadership people remember, and more importantly, it's the kind that actually moves the world forward. Knowledge has always been the most powerful tool for change. Not money, not status, not force, knowledge. It's what allows people to solve problems, make better decisions, and take control of their future. But knowledge on its own isn't enough. It has to be shared. It has to be distributed in a way that others can use it. Because when knowledge stays locked up inside institutions, inside expertise, inside people, it can't do the work it's meant to do. Empowerment begins when knowledge becomes accessible. If you want to make real progress, you start by making sure people have the information they need to understand the problem. Whether it's a farmer dealing with climate shifts, a student trying to learn in an under-resourced school, or a policymaker designing public health strategy, access to the right knowledge can transform what they're capable of. That's not an abstract idea. That's measurable, observable progress. The more people understand, the more they can contribute, the more they can lead, and the more resilient their communities become. It's easy to underestimate the power of a simple insight in the hands of someone who hasn't had access before. A mother in a rural village understanding how to prevent malnutrition, a teacher learning new methods to engage struggling students, a healthcare worker recognizing early signs of a disease before it spreads. These breakthroughs don't require revolutionary tools. They require timely, clear, usable information, and the impact multiplies when that knowledge is shared further. Technology plays a major role in this, but it's not about having the most advanced device or the fastest connection. It's about what those tools enable. Can a student in a remote area get access to high-quality learning resources? Can a small business owner analyze their market better and grow sustainably? Can researchers collaborate across borders to solve global problems faster? These are the questions that matter. The goal isn't just connectivity, it's capability. Creating access isn't just a technical challenge, it's a moral one. Too often, knowledge is shaped and held by those in power. And when that happens, the gap between those who can make decisions and those who are affected by them grows wider. Empowerment through knowledge means closing that gap. It means building systems where information flows both ways, where communities inform experts as much as experts inform communities, where learning isn't a top-down process, but a shared one. There's also a responsibility to make that knowledge understandable. Too much of the world's most important information is hidden behind jargon, locked in reports that aren't readable, or presented in ways that don't consider the people who need it most. Empowering others means translating complexity into clarity, not by oversimplifying, but by respecting the audience enough to communicate with precision and empathy. It means meeting people where they are and helping them move forward on their own terms. One of the most powerful things knowledge does is change what people believe is possible. It opens up new choices. It reveals paths they didn't know existed. That's true for individuals and for entire societies. You can see it in how people plan their futures when they understand their options better. You can see it in how communities respond when they understand how systems work and where they can intervene. Knowledge gives people agency, and agency is the foundation of dignity. There's a difference between solving problems for people and equipping them to solve problems themselves. The latter is harder, slower, and less visible. But it's also more sustainable Because when people are empowered with knowledge, they don't just fix what's broken. They build something better. They adapt, they teach others, and they keep improving long after the original intervention is gone. That's what lasting impact looks like. It's tempting to focus on innovation at the top, but real change accelerates when knowledge reaches the bottom, when the tools of understanding and critical thinking are available to more people, more ideas emerge. More solutions are tested, more lives are improved, not just through outside help, but through local ingenuity. That kind of change is decentralized, distributed, and difficult to control. And that's exactly why it works. In every field, in every corner of the world, the challenge remains the same. How do we get more knowledge into more hands, more quickly, and more clearly? That's where the future begins, not in speeches or strategies, but in the quiet moment when someone learns something new and realizes they can use it. That moment is what moves the world, and the more of those moments we create, the more progress we make. Success by itself is an empty metric. It can be built on profit, fame, or influence. But if it isn't grounded in something deeper, it fades. The most enduring kind of success isn't about what you accumulate. It's about what you enable. It's about aligning your work with a purpose bigger than yourself and using your time, energy, and resources to move something meaningful forward. When success is tied to purpose, it becomes more than a result. It becomes a responsibility. There's a natural pull in many industries to optimize for the short term, numbers that look good on a quarterly report, headlines that generate clicks, moves that keep stakeholders comfortable, but that kind of success doesn't last. It doesn't inspire teams to stay committed during hard seasons. It doesn't attract the kind of people who want to solve real problems, and it doesn't adapt well when the world changes, which it always does. Purpose acts like a compass when that happens. It keeps efforts steady. It gives direction when everything else is uncertain. When your work is grounded in purpose, decisions become clearer, not necessarily easier, but clearer. You start evaluating options based on how they contribute to long-term value, not just how they affect next week's optics. You begin asking questions like, will this help people who have been left behind? Or is this solution scalable in low-income communities? Or does this make the system more fair, more efficient, or more resilient? These are not the questions you ask when you're only trying to grow fast. They're the questions you ask when you're trying to grow right. And when you lead with purpose, people notice. Not just customers or partners, but the people you work with every day. They start to believe that what they do matters beyond their job description. They bring more of themselves into the work. They innovate more because the work is worth improving. They stay longer because the mission becomes personal and the culture shifts from chasing outcomes to building something enduring. Purpose doesn't mean abandoning excellence or avoiding results. In fact, it requires more discipline. It means holding yourself to a higher standard, not just in what you achieve, but in how you achieve it. It means resisting shortcuts, especially when no one's watching. It means asking for data, even when the story is uncomfortable. It means learning constantly, especially when you think you already know enough. True success rooted in purpose is often slow. It doesn't always come with fanfare. There are years where the work feels invisible, where the progress is hard to measure. But over time, the impact compounds. You see it in improved lives, more efficient systems, stronger communities. And when you look back, those quiet years become the foundation. The people who stick with purpose-driven work understand this. They're not motivated by recognition. They're motivated by results that last. You can also measure purpose-driven success by how well it scales. If an idea only works for the privileged few, it's not finished yet. If a tool only helps people who already have access, it's not solving the full problem. Purpose demands that solutions be inclusive, that they reach further, that they lift up voices that are too often left out. This isn't just altruism, it's effectiveness. The more diverse the input, the stronger the outcome. It also reshapes how risk is understood. In most traditional environments, risk is defined by what might go wrong, but in purpose-driven work, the greater risk is what happens if nothing changes, what happens if problems continue to go unsolved, if inequalities deepen, if potential goes untapped. That's a different kind of risks, lower moving but far more dangerous, and it changes how you invest, how you partner, how you prioritize. Purpose also brings clarity in moments of fatigue. No matter how passionate you are, there will be setbacks. Projects will fail, systems will resist change, people will question your direction, but when the work is connected to something meaningful, you get back up, you revise, you ask better questions, you bring new people in. You try again because it's not just about you. It's about the mission and the people it serves. Ultimately, purpose-driven success isn't a destination, it's a direction. It's about progress, not perfection. About persistence, not popularity. It's what turns good ideas into great systems. It's what transforms talented individuals into high-impact teams. And it's what ensures that when success comes, it actually matters. Not just to you, but to the world around you. In the cacophony of ambition and the clamor for power, there's a distinct clarity in purpose-driven action. While many may chase the spotlight, it's those who work diligently behind the scenes, guided by data and driven by purpose, who affect lasting change. Let's not be swayed by the noise. Instead, let's tune into the signals that guide us toward meaningful progress.